5 seconds, guys. Enjoy.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of Polybius. After a month break in August, we are back and with these new episodes. And today we got a friend. You've been in the panel for quite some time now. You've been part of the community, so thank you for being with us today. Ganesh, introduce yourself.
Simon, thank you. Thank you very much. It's exciting to be here, right? So, every day I dial in and it's some kind of Google Hangout, but see how immersive it is. So
Mm,
my name is Ganesh Harinath, 25 plus years software. Before I started my own journey, I was the VP and Chief Technology Officer at Verizon Media. My focus was artificial intelligence, and I built a 100 million business around artificial intelligence while I was at Verizon Media. Right
wow.
now, I'm the founder and CEO of Fiducia AI, where we are really trying to figure out metaverse, immersive experiences, Web3, NFTs, but in context to brands. So while we learn, we are starting to work with brands to help the brands connect with their consumers with immersive experience. And we're a big
Mm,
believers of making it work on the phone in the browser, just like how facial works very well in the browser and on the phone. We want to make these experiences happen for the brands. That's a little bit about me and my journey. While we continue to
but
socialize our learnings, there's always a lot of learnings.
but I think to a certain extent, especially a lot of people started hearing the word metaverse with Facebook rebrand.
Yeah.
Uh, Very similar to people talking so much about AI after OpenAI, right? So, and I think that the main problem was that in uh, in the initial idea of Zuckerberg, Horizon, the Zuckerberg metaverse was going to be only on a VR headset. And it's like the news just broke a couple of days ago that now you can actually go on Horizon on mobile and desktop as well. So that is exactly what you were saying. And I'm a big believer on of tech agnosticism when it comes
Yeah.
to immersive experiences. Otherwise, it will not work.
Right. Right. No, totally with
Eh,
you. Totally.
Okay, cool. And so basically, over time, with what we did with Polybius, and again, you've been one of the early uh, people in the community. We wanted to. It all started with the metaverse, right? So it's the first event. It was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, if I remember correctly, and that was all about immersive experiences. And after a while, we started seeing this need to understand better all these different technologies that, in a way, are linked and are building, let's say, the new version of the web. So we can call it
Yeah.
Web3 if we like, of course. And that is, of course, everything around immersive experiences, so VR, AR, spatial computing, call it what you like, and AI, of course, and of course, Web3. And this is exactly what I would like to talk about today, because to me, and I don't know if you agree with that, Web3 is pretty much the culmination of and the combination of all these different technologies. Because when we talk about Web3,
Totally.
we uh, we kind of, and I don't really like to think about technology in a linear way, and you know that better than I do. You've been working with AI for a long time, and it's never we got this little AI and tomorrow it's a little bigger and then it's a little bigger, but it's like an exponential growth all the time, right? To a
Yeah.
degree that a lot of the things we do now, think about all these GPT startups, for example, it was
Yeah.
unthinkable even 1 year ago. So, and that's not even a question. It's just, it's just but I would like to know your opinion on that. When we talk about
Definitely.
Web3, what do you mean with the term? Because it has so many connotations. So if I ask you, What is Web3 in your book? What would you answer?
Yeah, I think I try to keep things simple. I interact with different folks with different backgrounds, all the way from college students to people who are in the industry and industry veterans too. But what works well is the simplicity of the transition that we all are going through. Web 2 is a browser and two-dimensional. Web 3 could be on the phone, on the laptop, and head-mounted device, right? The new addition, head-mounted device. And it's immersive. And now there's a new term called spatial. And but our view about spatial and immersive is just one dimension. But what's fascinating about Web3 is the decentralization, which is the foundation for the entire future, is what I strongly believe. And that's where blockchain comes into play, right? We are in metaverse. When you start talking about transaction, eventually it's going to go hit that decentralized platform. Now, what has happened between metaverse and blockchain is a fascinating, very fast forward change around generative AI. You just imagine you can do things just by typing and communicating and having a conversation with a generative AI service. I personally have experienced it too. Now, when you combine all these things, it appears to be very complex, where many folks are focused a layer on top, right? Today, nobody talks about it. Today, nobody talks about browser, right? In the future, nobody talks about spatial dimension. So it's a way to interact, engage. It's a way to interact, engage for the brands with the consumer. And the shift has already begun, whether we like it or not. Participation is from within us. We are participating. We are here. We are experiencing it. We will learn and we'll continue to push the envelope. But what is Web3? Simple, simple definition is it is about decentralization. It is about immersive experience, is my view.
I'm pretty sure you're familiar with a company called Humane, and they did this very cool presentation a few months ago, and CEO said something that really resonated with me, and he said, "Look, for my kids, mobile phones would be a thing of the past, and maybe they will look at mobile phones the way we look at." I don't know, like you remember these old phones with the wheel, and I always say, that, and that is why I don't really like to talk about technology in a linear way, and I understand we need some kind of boundaries. So when we talk about Web3, it's kind of like we got a definition, but the thing is that it's not that we go from fax machines to uh, brain chip implants overnight. All this technology kind of like piles up little by little, and I always say, more than Web3, we are now probably in Web 2.5, even Web 2.4, and at some level these will coexist. Web 2 and Web 3 dynamics, and to a certain extent even Web 1 dynamics will coexist, right? Especially when it comes to brand. That is what is interesting for me. Would you agree with that, Ganesh?
Totally agree with you. I think it's a transition that we all have to live through. More importantly, the brands who like to connect with the consumers, the idea of phones are going to go away. It might happen over a period of time because it's a friction, right? When you want to see something in a different dimension, you rather want it to be in a glass somewhere, right on the corner where you can see it or not see it. All those things would happen. But let's go back and then look at internet. It took 10 plus years for all of us to really realize and forget about it. Now we don't talk about internet, but 20 years ago, that was the talk of the hour. What's fascinating with today, primarily around the technology that we are discussing, Web3, it's 10 times faster than what we saw with Web 1.
Yeah, that is exactly my point. And I think especially in an industry like ours, That's mainly travel and hospitality, where we are pretty much used to uh, pretty, I wouldn't say obsolete, but let's say traditional approaches. If we don't understand the magnitude of what is happening, we can totally lose so many opportunities. Now, with the internet, you're totally right. With the internet, we had the time to adapt.
Right.
It was not overnight. It was first interest, and then there was bubble, and then people started building interesting stuff, and we we had pretty much all the time to understand this new reality. Now with Web3, Gen AI, crypto, the metaverse, this is so quick, so fast that we could be in a position where this will become the norm before we even understand what the norm is. So, and again, that is why I think it's mainly a semester. But so let's go back to the main topic of the day, right? And that's pretty much what you guys do on a daily basis. That is helping brands understanding these new technologies, right? Um, when I talk about Web3, and especially when it comes to this episode, I talk a little about brands that are already adopting some Web3 uh, tactics. And this could be anything from marketing in Web3 or distribution or sales in Web3 and so forth. Now,
Right.
and I know you do have a few examples because we discussed about it via email.
Right.
If somebody wants to understand a little better what is actually happening in the Web3 space brand wise, what would be a few examples that you would mention?
There are many, but one thing that I get very excited, online shopping. The
Hmm.
numbers, just to be clear, in the US, around 80% of the shopping is done online and 20% retail. India,
Okay.
where I am from, I was born and brought up in India, moved to the US in 97. I understand what's going on there. 80% in store, 20% online. When the shift would happen, nobody knows. But there's a huge technology shift, but consumers are consumers. And many consumers don't care so much about the. So, us as technologists, what is that experience that we would like to bring to the consumers? And here is an example. Let's take a Rolex or a Louis Vuitton bag.
Hmm.
And I'm a shopper. I'm browsing online. I'm not on my head-mounted device, Vision Pro or Oculus or any one of those devices. I'm on my laptop or I'm on my phone for the most part, if you really pick Gen Zs and millennials. But still, I want to experience the product. The closest we can actually get to is when we try it on ourselves. And interestingly, that is possible today. There's a Rolex watch, there's a 3D model that's already done, a link to access and try it on, not one, but multiple. I liked one. That's the first part. Now I'm excited. Now, do I want to go to the store? Do I trust this? How do I buy this? The interesting fact today is for many of the luxury brands which actually change hands, it's sad. They're more uh, uh, very careful in using non-original products than the original
Hmm.
products. Right?
Yeah.
How can I trust this transaction is real? And this is where I get very excited because the whole idea of the decentralized platform blockchain comes into play right now. Imagine the physical object has an equivalent of a 3D model, including the serial number, as is unique, one in a kind of the that gets translated to an NFT. So there are three components here: the real physical watch, a 3D model, an exact copy, including the serial number, and an NFT. And I get all three. The NFT here is authenticity and warranty together. The 3D model is a replica of the physical product. So when I am in metaverse, I can use the 3D model. And in real world, I can actually use a real watch. All these things I actually do it with with confidence and comfort of my home when all these things together. That's experience. When you when you imagine a customer experience like this, he doesn't care so much about the technology. So what's happening? I can try the watch. Oh my God. Oh, you know what? I can trust that this whatever I'm going to get is real. And now the future, if I really want to sell, I have to move the three components: the physical
Mhm.
watch, the non-tradable NFT is what I call. You can't sell it like a crypto. That NFT is non-tradable. It's a warranty. It's authenticity for a luxury goods, and a 3D model, and that's complete for a millennial and Gen Z who's going to spend their time in metaverse and in real world. That's the future. That's the future, and that's how we look at and we aspire to build all the building blocks to get there. And many of the components are already there. That's interesting. That's really very interesting. But the challenge that we have today in many of our conversations, we talk about technology, right? Once we all start to layer the abstraction and build experience on top of it, it's just fascinating.
Do you think like that to a certain extent the abstraction itself is a problem? Because again, 20 years ago we were talking about the internet in different terms, right? Because we were trying to understand the technology. And today the internet is an afterthought. You don't even talk about the internet, okay?
Yeah,
And you don't talk about the internet as something that is disconnected from reality. It's part of your day-to-day life,
true.
right? And and do you think that especially for brands that need to stay in business and
Yeah.
is this is like an alienating way of talking about technology?
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting juncture that we are in right now. Transition from Web 2 to Web 3, and also the ecosystem and infrastructure. The experience that we were discussing a few minutes ago, 3D model, it's not a simple 10K message which downloads on the browser. Now suddenly we are talking about 3 MB being downloaded onto the phone, which is very different. 5G is evolving right now. Then eventually, when 5G is all over the place and speed is not a constraint, then it becomes very, very seamless to build these experiences. But the question is, do brands have to wait till all these things happen? That's going to be too late. And that's where transition is super important. So all the brands would actually go through a transitionary phase, interacting with consumers of two types. There are many, but two, from the infrastructure perspective: access to internet and access to compute on the phone. It's a new phone, iPhone 15 and 5G. Everything that we are discussing is going to be like internet. Nobody is going to talk about it. They're going to experience it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
question
sure.
is, right? The question is, oh, this consumer is using iPhone 8. He's on 4G LTE. It is intermittent.
Hmm.
But still,
Yeah.
how can we make this rich experience? And to me, I think what we are exploring, personally, what we are exploring is the power of generative AI, which actually still makes the content very exciting and compelling, and come up with lightweight experiences, not to the degree on a 5G phone with with iPhone 15, right? But still start to bridge the gap. It's not a straightforward thing. We are figuring out too.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and I think
a big time,
brands. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please.
big time. And look, I don't know if you can see it, but I added a little quote on the screen. This is exactly what
Yeah.
you were talking about. I'm not a big watch guy. Like I think I have the same scuba watch from the 90s, but I do like working in consulting for luxury brands. I do know a lot of people in watches, and so I know a little about watches. And
Yeah.
it was interesting to me to say, look, the first great Web3 applications are in the world of watches. And this is a quote from Panerai CEO. It's pretty much saying exactly the same thing. You know, I'm quoting now: with Fermi believe that digital passports, also basic blockchain proof of authenticity, are poised to transform possession of valuable assets, enabling our clients to trace the life cycle of watches, prove authenticity, and benefit from bespoke services tailored to each timepiece. Now, this is exactly what can happen in pretty much any other industry, including travel and hospitality, and especially when we talk about the luxury space, right? Whenever you want a proof of authenticity, whenever you want to make sure that you really own the asset, and in this case,
Yep.
it can be like an NFT replica of the watch. This is where Web3 is pretty much solving problems. And I think this is the only way we should talk about Web3 is when it comes to brand at least, is what problems are we trying to solve rather than this layer is cooler than this other layer. It's
True.
and but unfortunately, because a lot of this is done by tech guys, that's not the narrative. The narrative is all about the tech itself, but it's to me it's nonsensical.
True.
How do you think narrative? It is thanks to people like you that can actually understand the tech aspect of things, but can also understand the brand aspect of things. Do you think we should rethink marketing when it comes to Web3?
No, no, definitely. I think you bring up a very interesting point, and the timing is right as well, right? Even for the brands, they've been investing millions of dollars through digital marketing. And the timing is so right. The entire marketing strategy has to be given a new dimension. Many of them are familiar with something called cookies, the browser cookies, which actually anonymously versus the profile to give relevant advertising. That's going to go away almost pretty much by end of this year. The $1 million that a brand marketing agency or the brand is spending and the value from that is going to diminish very, very soon. And
It
this is
already
where
is.
it, yeah,
Already
and this
is.
is where,
Like
yeah,
with cookieless browsers or like in Europe we got quite a lot of DuckDuckGo users that I think
yeah.
follows a pretty similar logic. But again, that kind of privacy aggressive marketing is dying, right?
Yeah. It is dying, and maybe it's for good. It's for good because at the end of the day, the brands should know their consumers well. They don't have to depend on intermediaries to understand the profile of their consumers. It's in best interest of the brands to directly engage with the consumers as much. No doubt, they would have to take help from others like the brand marketing agencies and so on. But the ownership is on the brands to come up with these strategies. And I'll give you some examples too. I don't want to be vague. We talk about NFTs, and this is where we're starting to socialize non-tradable NFTs. Say, for example, if I, as a brand, uh, give an NFT to a consumer, and if the value of the NFT goes up and down by the second, he's not experiencing the brand. He's more worried about the NFT that he's actually holding in his hand. But just imagine this NFT opens an experience gate into your travel industry, just like some of the credit cards provide. That's a game changer. Those are non-tradable NFTs where they actually keep log of all these engagements. And if the brands have to connect, they know where to go connect. The brands have to socialize or publish some of those experiences and keep the engagement going. That's the problem that the new Web3 world would empower brands to be able to solve. And it's fascinating to see how brands can directly engage with the consumers. At that point in time, and it's not about technology, a lot of us, right, will be there to make all these things happen. But the undercurrent, the biggest change that we would actually start, there's more and more direct engagement, opportunity for direct, I would say opportunity for direct engagement between the brands, consumers. That to me is exciting.
But that is in a nutshell, that's pretty much the definition of decentralization. And
Yeah,
especially in an industry like ours, right? Travel is extremely centralized. But let me give you some statistics just to put things into perspective. There's a study made by The Edge. It's a pretty big tech provider for travel and hospitality, and it
Yeah.
says that pretty much 67, if I remember correctly, percent of this room distribution is in the hands of just three players. There are
Mhm.
similar studies. There is one from Mirai saying that 99%, that's scary, 99% of meta search volume in travel is in the hands of three players. So it's a super centralized industry. And on top of that, it's very hard with this centralization to keep a direct contact with your customers to an extent.
Mhm.
And you know that you probably experienced this at least as a user. If you book a property via booking.com, the hotel will never receive your real email address. They will receive an alias, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you think about it, that is like the definition of not owning your customers, because
True.
it's
That's true.
it's basically it's closing all the doors for future interaction with your
Yeah.
potential customer, right? So do you think that Web3 in this regard could actually solve the problem of getting closer to your customers in a way that is even privacy privacy compliant, especially and you're in California right now. You got a very similar privacy regulation that we do have in
Yes.
Europe, right? And
Yes.
it's very strict. It's very
Yeah.
strict. And Web3 can actually solve that. So how do you see that getting into marketing tactics in the next few years?
No, I think it's an opportunity to bring in that change. Uh, Now, the importance of the third-party data was very high the last one. That's going to change by end of this year. And when I say third-party data, that is through cookies, key tracking, and so. It's interesting. The big change that we would all start to see is first-party data. And the question is, how do we collect the first-party data? And as a brand, irrespective of the industry, travel or a brand owner or even a player who's building their brand. So they all have to work with some of the strategies to put a strategy together to start collecting first-party data. And the answer is simple, but the execution is complex. First-party data is first name, last name, email address, and we would start to see two types of profiles. People who would like to stay anonymous but still would like to reap the benefits interacting with the brands. That's where an aspect of NFT, a flavor of NFT digital wallet would actually come and then protect their identity, but still be able to interact with and engage with the brands directly. People like me, if I want a service, I would be very happy to actually share my information. That way, I'm connected and continue to enjoy those conversations, right, with the brand. So and now the technology as part of technology, how can you use this technology to collect first? I as a consumer would be excited to see in return what is offered to me. It's up to the brands to come up with their stories. And it's super important. Brands start to socialize their stories all the way from sustainability, effort towards sustainability, all the way to how they are connected to the community and the innovative experiences and authenticity. All these stories can directly be shared with the and if the consumer loyalty is going up towards a brand, he'll be very willing to stay connected. And the biggest difference between a few years ago and now, I can be anonymous and still be connected. But I also
Okay.
have a choice to disclose my identity and still be connected. That's a big change that we would start.
Well, that is a
So,
great way.
in a
That's a great angle. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it makes total sense.
yeah, but interestingly, it is up to the brand how they would like to approach. And it's very clear we are running out of time, especially the brands. Come up with some of these strategies and start to activate their channels and to connect share not just as a brand, share how they are plugged into the world, the ecosystem, planet, the community, and the consumer. Right? These are the stories. But just to underline, consumers can interact the brand in an anonymous way, or they can share their identity. It's choices
Well,
of the user.
if you think about it, that's really the first time we can actually do that, because for Web3, you had to sacrifice one, either your privacy or the ability to get more personalization from brands, right? And we don't have to choose now with Web3. And that's
Don't have
interesting, and this is, I
to.
think, where AI gets into the puzzle as well. And I was having this discussion with I don't even remember who. We're talking about TikTok, right? And
Uh-huh.
this guy told me something that really resonated with me. He said, "Look, the thing with TikTok is it's so addictive, and users, they kind of, when they start using TikTok, they keep using TikTok because the algorithm is so good at understanding what you want and what you don't want." And he
Yeah.
told me something, and I tried it, and he was totally right. And if you haven't, you should try this as well. So look, try to go on TikTok, uh,
Uh,
like a couple of videos of your liking,
Yep.
and then let the algorithm do what the algorithm does.
Good.
Let's try to do the same thing with Facebook, and you will see a huge
Huge
difference.
difference.
And we're
Yeah.
still talking about Web2 here, but the level of personalization and the quality of the
Yep.
algorithm when it comes to not only understanding what you like, but even predicting what.
Yep.
And this is what I think is a great way to, and, like it or not, TikTok, I got a lot of negative things to say about it, but I think they are very good at that. That is hooking the users via hyper personalization.
Hyper
Now, if you add a level of privacy to that, you pretty much have Web3, right?
true. That's true. That's really true.
Ganesh, I know
So
that we briefly talked over our email exchange about a concept that is very close to you, and that is the convergence between the physical and the digital or augmented, virtual, call it what you like, world
that,
through Web3. Can you tell me a little more about that?
no, definitely. And not because of bias, but that's how the world works, is what I believe. With millennials and Gen Z, they are going to spend more time in the digital world, which they are already, and even more so in the future, and generations to come in the future than in the physical world. And that's a shift that is inevitable. We are seeing it. We are going to continue to see more and more. But we, as a human being and as a social animal, we enjoy most being here in the physical world as well. And our interactions are going to be in the physical world. Now, the interesting shift that is happening right now, both from the consumer's perspective, from brands, or human living perspective, we want to create experiences, we want to share our messages, and we want to engage as a community and as a consumer too. And that can happen where more people spend more time. Now, the shift is more and more folks are starting to spend time in digital world, and eventually metaverse would be a norm, just like internet. We'll forget about it, and generations to come would continue to be. Now, it's a fascinating shift. How do you connect all these physical experiences that are actually happening here, connect it to the metaverse? That way, your consumers, when they're in the physical world and the metaverse, it's the same. There's an example that I'm going to share toward very simple example, socialize. But that's a change that we all have to start to understand as technologists, as business owners, and see how we want to make this seamless. and people use the term digital twin. It's still complex. What is
Yeah.
digital twin? What is digital twin of a watch? Right? What is digital twin of a car? From the technology standpoint, and that's the reflection of how the world is headed. So every physical object would have a twin, which can reside anywhere in any verse, then be accessible. And eventually it would be very unique, one-on-one matching for me. And some of it are beliefs. We'll see how far we can actually get. That change is happening as we speak. Right?
Well,
Now,
if you think about it, that is in the industrial metaverse, even though I hate the term,
yep.
but that is pretty much already happening with factories having their digital twins. And these digital twins are pretty much solving precise scope. So it's not only, again, it's not only digital twin because it's cool or because it's, hot or, or sexy. It is because it's actually solving a problem, right?
True, it is. It is, and it's just fascinating, right? People talk about sustainability and other things. I also connect all these dots back to sustainability. When food is not wasted, we are becoming more sustainable. How can it not be wasted? When we know where the supplies are, how can we know where the supplies are? When it is digitized, when it is when the information is published, when all these things are connected, we know exactly where the demand is, where the supply is, both from the physical perspective and from the digital perspective. We make decisions based on the digital information. Just a few minutes ago, you mentioned generative AI or AI, like put together. Apply AI, it can tell you the chaos that would be created in the next 2 months because all the digital signals are there. This is very complex. The topic that we're discussing is very complex, but there's an opportunity, and these things would take time. There's an opportunity to solve all the way from supply chain problems to very simple connecting the physical world and the digital world. And I'll give you an example. There is a product which has a digital trigger. It could be an RFID or a QR code, and suddenly you scan and then you're in metaverse. You are in metaverse of Louis Vuitton, and then you're actually exploring. You want to try it on. You get it on the phone. You try it on. You see how seamless that experience is. We are not too far away from that. The tech that is needed for all these things to happen is there. We have to stitch it, but most importantly, it has to be an experience. It can't be a technology. And that's where I wouldn't say all, many of them are working very hard to make this seamless.
But let me tell you something, because
you.
I think to your point, we are not having this discussion anymore with the internet, right? It's pretty much obvious that if I do something wrong online, this will have an impact on my quote unquote real life, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like that 20 years ago. To the extent that you remember that, like in the 90s, it was even hard to prove cybercrime because for a lot of people, these crimes were happening like in a video game. They did not have any impact in real life. And now it's an afterthought, and we're not even thinking about connecting to the internet. If anything, we're thinking about disconnecting from the internet, right? And in our industry, for example, in travel, there's a lot of talking of this no tech retreat, for example, or disconnecting retreats. And so you see the shift, the paradigm completely shifted to the extent that not only we're not talking about connecting, but we're talking about disconnecting. And I think a lot of many problems when it comes to the narrative today is that we still do a very big distinction between online, digital, virtual, immersive, and but especially for thinking about Gen Alpha, for example, this
Mhm.
distinction is very blurred to the extent that I think that in a couple of generations, the question itself would be meaningless.
Yeah.
Where does my physical experience starts and where does my digital experience start? It will make no sense at all. Would you agree with that?
Totally. There's no doubt about it at all. And interestingly, what you said is making me think this way. Today, we start in physical and then go to the digital world. It would be the exact opposite in most cases. They wake up in the morning, they wear their glasses, and then suddenly you have the AR experiences, giving their calendar and all that. Right? Start with digital and then come back to the physical. So that's inevitable. That's a shift that Gen Alpha and further down would start to experience. And it won't be a question about a lot of the things that we are discussing right now. Just like 20 years ago, discussion about internet, about credit cards, when we can put our physical dollars online, right?
Mm.
That happened many years ago, and there are issues, right? There are crimes that happen simultaneously. We figure it out. There are good soldiers who go and then try to protect large consumer. So we all will go through a lot of these things.
Do you think
At the
that to
end
a
of the
certain
day,
extent, can I ask you something? Do you think that to a certain extent, the fact that Web3 is so heavily linked with crypto and the narrative behind crypto is what it is, and of course there are scams, there are big crashes. And do you think that this connection between Web3 and crypto, that is basically a technical connection, it's a blockchain, but do you think it's actually harming the reputation of Web3 and to a certain extent slowing down the adoption of Web3?
it is. It is. It's a fact. We just can't deny that. It's a scar, but interestingly, we all have to figure out how to erase this scar and move forward. Because decentralization is about building decentral apps or applications. Interestingly, NFTs and crypto became one of the early application of the decentralized ecosystem, which was misinterpreted in many different dimensions. I strongly believe that would actually start to fade away. Um, and it'll all be good. It'll all be good. And I'll tell you what it is and what it means. Uh, Connecting the globe. Today, there are countries. There will be only one country, that's planet Earth. I see Web3 is a layer, be layered across all these countries for greater good. And I'm a big believer, and I want to see this happen too, where the Web3 could actually eliminate some of the inequalities across different countries. But it's a long way to go. It's a long way to go. Just going back to your point about cryptocurrencies and NFTs, tradable NFTs, where ideally there were good applications too, but there was so much money poured in the space. It polluted the entire philosophy of decentralized ecosystem. It's going to change. We're going to change it.
Well, I do. Look, I totally agree, and I think that Web3 still has the stigma just because of that. But again, it's exactly the same stigma the internet had in the 90s. So nothing like the funny thing to me is that Mark Twain once said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, and I love that quote because it's really what is happening now around the Web3 is not very uh, far away from what it was happening around the internet in the 90s.
Sure.
Let me ask you like a personal question. Will not be
Sure.
super personal. Let's say
Sure.
semi personal. In your in an average day, how much time Ganesh spends on Web 2 and how much time spends on Web 3?
About 25% or more. Actually, it's a even higher percentage. It would be somewhere close to the 50% today. And I'll give you the breakdown very clearly. I do nothing without a consult with generative AI, right?
Mm.
That was not my style before. And the content the team would continue to work with, I'm very deeply engaged with. When I have to build a story, I actually continue to use Web3. I'm getting close to 50%. And my definition of Web3 is as follows. The topmost is generative AI. Then comes augmented reality and other immersive visual experiences. Then is a blockchain, non-tradable NFT, where we are actually early stages of disrupting the ecosystem. So the investment is just internally. Then transactions. Not a lot of transactions using blockchain at this point in time. So that's
And we
my.
sometimes we don't even know, right? Because that's the thing. Like some of the transaction we do or the brands do, they are on the blockchain, and we don't like. I always say, when I talk to skepticals, I always say the same thing. Look, have you had your coffee this morning? And of course they say yes. It's the most addictive drug there is. And many companies are moving the tracking system of their coffee on the blockchain. Like in Italy, we got Lavazza's pretty well-known brand, and they're moving pretty much everything on the blockchain. So when you drink that coffee, even if you do not know it, you actually just made a blockchain transaction.
What you said is right. What you said is really right. And I want to give two very clear statistics too. And this is no exaggeration, by the way. My overall performance, the activity to build anything that we do at Fiducia went up 3 times in the last 6 months. And the interesting fact is Web3 started off with blockchain and then came immersive and then came generative AI. For us at Fiducia, it's more like a top-down. It's more generative AI. Any code that we actually do is out of generative AI. Then the refinement comes in. Any editorial that I do, I actually use generative to be very transparent. Images gets generated. Experience, the content that we are creating for the brand, it's very immersive. And we are socializing blockchain part, how non-tradable NFTs can be used. So my efficiencies went up 3 times in the last 6 months. Just fascinating. I couldn't do what I'm doing today. And interestingly, today it went up slightly higher because in the last 1 hour, this is Web3.
That is true. That is true. I always say
so it's
again,
more than 50% today.
yeah, and it's when I think, of course, Gen AI is the major force, at least right now. But yes, if I look at the way I do things today, not even work-wise, even in my personal life, and how I was doing these things just 3 or 4 years ago, it's uncomparable. The time that I save and the way I'm more productive is just it's a different planet, right? And I think that's it. If you understand, if you put the bias aside and you kind of forget everything you think you know about Web3 and you just embrace it, you will see that, as you said, it could be a very beneficial force for the planet.
That's true.
Ganesh, this was a very interesting conversation. And sorry for the personal question, but I think it's interesting that people understand that we're not only talking about Web3, we're actually using Web3 every day. And this is solving so many of our problems, right? And this can be implemented in brands. Ganesh, if people want to get in touch with you and know more about what you're doing in the Gen AI space or the immersive space, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. Ganesh Harinath. Fiducia AI is the name of the company. I'll reply back to our email thread and then I'll share that information. I'm active on email as well, but I'll share my personal information as well. GANESH.HARINATH at Fiducia AI. Let me type it out if that helps.
Oh, I will add it on the post. So never mind. I know it. It's I will add it on the post.
Wonderful. And I would like to say something very interesting and important for the travel industry because you're very focused on travel. I want all of us on planet Earth to finish business as much as possible online and travel in real. Travel in real. These efficiencies would translate to having more time with us to enjoy life, travel, meeting new
That
people,
is
and
so true.
That's how I look
So
at life.
true. That is
Simone.
so very very true. Look, I always say that look, I always used some level of AI in day-to-day work.
Yeah.
You know, with consulting, there's quite a lot of that. There's quite a lot you can automatize, right? Being online campaign creation or whatever.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, and especially with OpenAI, I think I have probably 30% more free time in any given day because I'm way more productive. Like, and I can choose. I can choose what to do with this extra time. I can either get more clients, Simone time, and travel. I never thought about it up until the moment you say that. But actually, after ChatGPT, I travel so much more because I have more time. So that's
Definitely.
great, guys. This is really, I think this is the message we can use to wrap this up because it's a great message. If Web3 is going to do something good for the travel space, at least there is one thing that is going to do, and that is freeing up your time so you can actually travel more. So that's a great angle. Ganesh, thank you
Awesome.
so much for your time. I would like to do it again. We'll get in touch in the future, of course. We're working on a few other projects, mainly on Gen AI. So I will totally ask your expertise again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the viewers. And sorry we started a little late today. Thanks as usual to our wonderful team at Hospitality Net, Davey, that you never see, just behind the metaverse camera, and Jill. Without Jill, nothing is. Thank you, Jill.
Wonderful. Simone, I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank you and including me, part of your journey here today. It's been fantastic. Love to continue, and let's continue to do our part to change the world. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ganesh. Enjoy the rest of your day in sunny California. I go back to finish my daily work, even though I will ask ChatGPT much of it. Thank you so much, guys, and see you again in a month. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.